So the first question in our Q&A series comes from Ryan, and he's asking, how do you recommend to auto-regulate on a program? And as he said, that's a very difficult question to answer because there's an infinite number of scenarios that can pop up that make you have to adjust your training on the fly in one way or another. So I'll do the best I can to answer it and give a few examples, and then maybe we can branch off of that into further discussions if there's anything specific that you were wondering about. But um, I want to start off with an example, and we'll take a lifter who, let's say their squat max is 500 pounds, and they're assigned on a certain day to do a set of 3 at 85%, which would be 425 pounds. If they're running a percentage-based program, then they have really no freedom in what weight selection they're supposed to do on that day. If they're doing an auto-regulated approach, the planned weight would likely be somewhere around 425 pounds, but they have a little bit of freedom to go above or below that. So like if you're assigned a set of 3 at 8 RPE, that means we're looking for a set of 3 with 2 reps left in the tank. In most scenarios, you'll probably end up being around 425 pounds for this lifter. But if you're using auto-regulation, you can go, maybe 3% above or below that based on whether it's a good day or a bad day. And that's usually the window that we give people that are running auto-regulated programs. We'll have a chart that we give them, which I'll share below, that you can use as a reference point. So they can go into that session knowing that their set of 3 at 8 RPE should be somewhere around 85%, but they have the freedom of going above or below that based on how they're feeling on a certain day. So if they go into a session where they got no sleep the night before and they didn't eat very well and they're just not feeling very good, then maybe they're going to end up on that lower end. Whereas if they slept great, nutrition's really going well, everything, all the bases are covered as far as recovery, and they're feeling good in warm-ups, then maybe they end up going above that number and they end up doing like 88%, 435, 440, something like that. While still getting the same desired training effect that we're looking for. So, whether it's a percentage-based approach or an auto-regulated approach, we're basically trying to elicit a certain training stress with the loads that we're assigning there. So when we're assigning a set of 3 at 8 RPE, we want it to be a set of 3 where there's a couple reps left in the tank. We don't want it to be a max set of 3, and we don't want it to be a set of 3 where there's 4 or 5 reps left. We're trying to get a specific training effect from that set. Whereas, you might have that same thing in mind when you're assigned a certain percentage, but you don't have the freedom of going above or below that. So if it's a day where you're feeling off and you're assigned that 85% for a set of 3, you kind of have to hit that number. And if it ends up being a max, then that can lead to some of your next training days not feeling so good and kind of a snowball effect of difficult or poor training sessions. So that's why I tend to prefer auto-regulation, because it gives you a lot more freedom to kind of take advantage of the good days and maybe down-regulate on some of the days where you're not feeling as good, but you still set yourself up for better days ahead because you're keeping yourself in that desired training window rather than overshooting and getting that snowball effect of poor training sessions. So that's an example as far as the benefits of using auto-regulation, and then some examples of how to use it. Another situation might be if you're coming back from an illness or something like that. Usually in those scenarios, if you're feeling good enough to train in general, then I would say to cut out more volume rather than intensity. So, you still want to be able to handle relatively heavy weights, but you're probably in a situation where, if you're coming off of an illness or something like that, you're probably going to have a hard time like breathing and recovering between sets. And your recovery in general is just not going to be as good from whatever infection or whatever it is that you're fighting off. So usually in those situations, I'll say to, maybe cut your volume in half for at least a few sessions until you start feeling better again, or, cut off 1 or 2 working sets here and there, that type of thing. So you're still getting some heavy exposure and a good training stimulus, but you're not, running yourself into the ground with training and trying to recover from the illness itself. So usually in that situation, you want to keep your training rates relatively close to what they would be normally, but maybe cut out some of the volume that we'd normally do because you need to be able to recover from both the training and the sickness until you're back to normal. So that's just some examples there, and hopefully that makes sense. And I think that's it for right now. So hopefully that answers your question, gives you a few examples and things to think about there, and things that we're thinking about on the coaching side of it. And if there's anything else or you want to continue the discussion, I'll be happy to do that. And that's it. So talk to you guys soon.